Welcome to this episode of What's Happening Waupaca. My name is Joni. Today we're going to be talking about what is arts. What does it do for us? How does it affect our quality of life? Where's it going in the city of Waupaca? So we're going to do this in just a couple of segments, but I want to introduce my guests first. We have Tammy Wolter, we have Kevin Knopp, we have Anita Olson, and we have Henry Veliker, the City of Waupaca Administrator, with us. So we are welcome, everybody, to the show.
Hello.
It's always good to have a group of people on here because I like the fact that we can have a conversation about what's going on, and I think arts is a very important topic. So we're going to start by talking about what arts is. What is the definition? Because it's pretty hard to define, isn't it, Tammy?
It's a very difficult thing to define. I think we do get ourselves into trouble when we try to say, well, that's art and that's not art. In my opinion, art covers a huge area, anywhere from performing arts with instrumental music into the arts where you're making things with your hands. It's a very broad topic. I think in a lot of ways that if you're being creative and exploring new things in that way, that I think that very much is art.
And that's what someone else told me at one point, is art is a matter of reaching out and trying to do something creatively. You know, like the chalk art that's on the sidewalks in the summer in Waupaca is art. Kevin, how do you feel about that? How would you define art?
If I were to define art, which I don't like to define things very much, but I would, from my own personal experience, describe it as a personal expression that involves communication. Simple as that. It can involve one artist, it can involve 20 artists, that at least has the hope of communication. I don't think that an artist ever creates without expecting it to be received by somebody who receives that communication at some point in time.
And that's a really interesting way to look at it. And my oldest brother, Scott, who had a doctorate in communication, would have agreed with you wholeheartedly that art is about, and disagree with me if you want to, but arts is about expressing yourself and your individuality for someone else to see and to interpret.
I think so. For me, the most relevant art has a strong personal connection via either the subject matter or the means of formal expression. It's not formulaic. It's not derived obviously from another source. It has some element of a personal search involved, and but it can be a 5-year-old doing a chalk drawing. It can be. I mean, I used to teach art on every level from kindergarten to freshman in college, so I kind of appreciate expression at any level in terms that it may come upon.
Great. I mean, that's. I think that's an important thing to view. Is we think of ourselves as either artists or not artists. You know, I either have talent or I don't have talent. And I was telling you guys before the show, my art teacher in high school was like drawing, and he passed me just to get me out of class. I mean, because he literally said, you had like zero talent, Joni. But my talents as an artist come in different ways, because I was in band, I was in choir, I was in speech, I was in all of these kinds of things. And I think that seeing the art of a child is as important and as revealing of the individuality of a person as seeing art of an adult. Tammy, or Anita, would you?
Well, I don't consider myself an artist who brings work for other persons to see, but I am, because I have a store filled with art that I have put together, and it's other people's things. So I think I have an eye of seeing art, listening to music, reading poetry, listening to stories. So I have a wide range of appreciation of art that then I can talk about to others. I can't probably write those or draw those or sing those, but I can bring that to other people because I am a lover of many, many kinds of art, spoken, written, drawn. music.
And we're going to go into that a little bit further as we talk in our next segment, because I think that those are really important points. So we've kind of defined what art is, which is really hard because it's so vast. But what is Henry, from not only a citizen but a city point of view, how do you think art adds to the quality of life in Waupaca?
Well, as someone who's not very artistic, I'm kind of in your bucket, Anita. I have an appreciation. I have 3 children, thanks to the Waupaca music department. They love music. They've learned to play music. They can express themselves very well. And I think for people, it's kind of part of them to see beauty in different ways and to experience different types of art and things like that. And I think from the city perspective, what I see our role as a city is to try to create the opportunity for people to experience it. Now, it's not necessarily just putting money and helping develop art stores, let's say, but beautiful places where people can go sit in parks and just experience the water going by. And I got turned on to this concept since working with our arts groups about two years ago, the idea of creativity. We think of creativity kind of in the arts, but really organizations, all great organizations, foster creativity in their people and how they do things and how they approach problems. So I think there's creative tendencies in all of us, even me, you know, even though I can't do any of that, you know, artistic types of stuff. But I feel like I have a temperament that helps me maybe approach my job differently and those kind of things. So I think the whole concept of creativity can be just so broad and across all of us, our whole community.
The other thing about art is I think it balances us. Excuse me. No matter what kind of lives we are living, we all have stress, and art can balance us.
Yep.
By just taking that time to see something beautiful, whatever we call beautiful, it does balance us and give us a nice sigh on a busy day, and then we can go on.
I agree with that. Now, Tammy, you told me earlier that you have taught art. What do you think your students come away with, and not necessarily in the as far as how good your art is or whether you're ever going to become a Van Gogh, but what do you think a student of yours comes away with as far as improving their quality of life?
I taught music for many years, and one of the benefits in that is that it elevates your math skills, your reading skills, because learning how to read music is actually another language, and so it helps some of those skills very much. I think back to what Anita was saying is that oftentimes if you play an instrument or practice a skill that you have, where it be drawing or painting or ceramics, it's a great reliever of stress. Like you said, so from the hands-on, the actual participant, that's a stress relief. But then if you go to a concert where you have the participants becoming performers, or if you go to an exhibit like what we have out at the Expo in the spring, where all of the different artists from a vast part of the community put things on display, the people that just walk in and look at it, it's sort of this relaxation, a stress reliever, both for the participant and the audience person who's watching. So I think in this day and age, we need as much stress relief as possible, and I think it's a great mode of doing that.
I played drums in band. It was a great stress reliever, yes. Let me tell you. Kevin, from your point of view as an artist, tell me how you think your life would have been different without artistry in it from childhood on.
Boy, that's really hard to even comprehend, because I guess always kind of thought of myself as an artist. There was always art in our home from relatives of mine, actually in Europe, who we helped out, my family helped out after World War II. They were refugees, and they would, we sent care packages, and they sent oil paintings and drawings back to us in gratitude. So I remember as a young boy just latching on to these magical images and wanting to emulate them, and I think that was a real key to spurring on my own thought of myself as a visual artist, and led to my, I won't call it really a career, but my passion for continuing to create and as well as teach and exhibit and talk about art.
So not only did you get an appreciation of what you were looking at, but it also created a drive in you to be creative and to become something, you know, because we talk to people, or we hear from people who say, I wanted to do that from the time I was 5. And it sounds like that was kind of yours as you looked at these paintings and said, I want to be able to do this.
Well, yes, that, and I wanted to comment too on Tammy's notion of music as a language, and I completely agree, studying piano right now and learning how to read music as an adult. Art is also a language. I find it in my own teaching, I try to convey that understanding, that breaking down of art as a language, as signs, and even to the point, what makes us recognize a landscape as a landscape, or is it just a bunch of blobs of color? They signify things that are culturally spoken or instilled, I guess. And you can look at, you know, the tradition of realism, impressionism to modern art as a changing of the language, but it's still a language nonetheless. It's not meaningless. It has meaning.
Yeah, it does. It really does, because anytime we see a piece of an art, whether we like it or don't, whether we enjoy it or not, it is still creating an individualism of opinion within us.
It brings out an emotion usually.
Brings out an emotion. Perfect. Okay.
And one way everyone is an artist is the way they dress. And there are days that we are having a gloomy day and we might put all our browns and blacks on. There might be a day when we put stripes and plaids together because we're more daring on that day. And when people see us, they know from day to day there's something different about this person. And we might not even think that through at all, but I think it's a way of showing who we are, just like the poem we might write. So we are all artists.
Agreed.
People sometimes just don't think they're artists, and they are.
Because I think our teaching, what we learned, is that art is a very narrow, you paint or you play an instrument or you sing. I mean, our definition of art tends to be very narrow. And so if we can't draw, we say, I'm not an artist. When we have, we all are, because we all show our individualism.
I agree completely with that. And I was going to say, you know, in my teaching, I don't believe in, you know, talent per se. I think everyone has an innate ability to communicate and express themselves either with music and art. And I mean, that's what I do as a teacher. I try and uncover that and kind of wipe I don't really believe in facility or, you know, that can be brought out, that ability to be creative in whatever medium it is, be it piano, drums, paint, glass, whatever.
And I think our roles as teachers in art and music is to encourage. And maybe some people have experienced teachers that didn't actually encourage them, and that's sad because everyone does have gifts in these areas. So
It's a matter of finding what the gift is,
Yeah.
which is what good teachers do. So on that note, we're going to take a short little break. We are going to come back and talk about the current landscape of arts, what's happening in Waupaca as far as arts. So thanks for joining us. This is What's Happening in Waupaca, talking about arts here in Waupaca, and we'll be back soon.
the Waupaca Recreation Center, featuring programming for all ages. Home of the Waupaca Senior Center and youth programming Friday and Saturday nights, featuring 2 full gyms and space for various sports and activities. Visit the Dance Exercise Studio for a variety of classes. The Rec Center is a safe place to hang out. Also featuring a computer lab and classes, and a meeting room and other facilities available for rent. The Rec Center features different programming and meetings, and is the home of the Parks and Recreation Office. The Waupaca Recreation Center, a great place for all ages and activities. 407 School Street, downtown Waupaca.
Welcome back to What's Happening in Waupaca. Today we are talking with Tammy Walter. We're talking with Kevin Knopp, Anita Olson, and City Administrator Henry Veliker, and we're talking about arts in Waupaca. And we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about what the current landscape of arts is in Waupaca, who is affected, who is it open to, and we talked about some really neat things during our little break, and we'll see what we can get to in the time allotted. But Henry, why don't you tell me, and again it's from a city point of view, and also I think from a dad point of view, where do you see art in Waupaca?
That's a tough question, but the way I kind of view it is that I've been here about 20 years, and I sense that we have a pretty good base of artistic talent. We've got some great arts programs in the school system, some great community arts projects. I would even put Winchester Academy in a category kind of just offerings that we have here. So I think, we start, maybe in the 80th percentile of communities our size in the whole state of Wisconsin. So kind of looking objectively, there's a lot to work with. I've kind of look at this as being a non-artist, but appreciating it and appreciating culture as more of an economic development endeavor. And I'm going to look down because I can't remember the notes. In Wisconsin, in 2016, there's some data, 657 million in economic activity, and it employs about 27,000 people full-time. So it is a thriving sector of our economy. Sadly, the state of Wisconsin does not invest in the arts.
No.
In the Midwest, we spend 13 cents per capita. Illinois spends 63, Michigan 62, Minnesota $6.36. So it's almost, from where I sit, it's economic development, it's public policy. Okay. What can we do to make it thriving? Because all people want a beautiful place to live, a place where they have lots to do and lots of offerings. And so it is quality of life. And I think that's kind of the business we're in municipal government, is to help create that quality of life. We can't do it alone, and there's no magic wand, but it's something worth putting some effort into, I think.
So what would you say, Kevin? What do you think the landscape of arts is right now in Waupaca?
Well, thank you, Joni, and I wanted to follow up on a couple of Henry's points. I agree that there's some very positive things in Waupaca, and we are probably fairly above average culturally for a town our size. There's the Arts in the Square, there's the 60-year art program, there's the community concert, the Winchester Academy, I agree completely. There's just a number of very positive things in our community. There's a lot of live music around Waupaca. I'm a musician who perform here from time to time. That doesn't mean it can't be improved. One of the things as a visual artist that I would love to see sometime is some type of permanent space for a permanent collection of our talented people, the Doris Weeds, the Ellen Baxters in Waupaca. There's a lot of people that could have work, and it could be also have group shows or individual shows throughout the year. It would require some funding by the community. I think it's important to have a public-private combination in supporting the arts. I think mature arts economies like Mineral Point, and I don't know if you've ever researched that, but what did they do to promote the blossoming of the arts in their community? Not that we need to emulate them, but I mean, we could learn from them that their arts with just pure capitalism, I don't think often do very well. I think there needs to be a public-private symbiosis. Being a visual artist, you mentioned Wisconsin's ranking. When I taught at UW-La Crosse, everybody said if you're a tenure track, buy a place in Minnesota because it's like number 2 or 3. Wisconsin, sadly, since 2010 is maybe just above Kansas as their support for the arts. Wisconsin did have a 10-member full-time arts board. Now there's one, I think, under the auspices of the Wisconsin Tourism Bureau.
So what I seem to be hearing from you two gentlemen is that Waupaca has a good base, but it's got somewhere to go.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when we come back in just a little bit, we are going to talk about where are we going to go? How are we going to foster it? So it's nice to hear that there is a basis, because I think there is. I think there's a lot of arts in Waupaca. It certainly is available, but it's going to be a really interesting conversation to find out where we need to go to make it a higher quality of life for us and more open to absolutely everyone. So we'll be right back talking about the future of arts in Waupaca. I am Joni, and you're watching What's Happening Waupaca.
Like the City of Waupaca on Facebook. This is a great way to keep in touch with the City of Waupaca and communicate back to us. The City of Waupaca Facebook page keeps you informed about city services, upcoming events, alerts, helpful reminders, and even some nice pictures from around the city. Go ahead and like the City of Waupaca on Facebook. Find us at facebook.com/City of Waupaca.
Welcome back to What's Happening Waupaca. I am Joni. Today we are talking about art in Waupaca. We've talked about what is it. We've talked about what is the landscape of it now in Waupaca. And I got to tell you that we took a short little break and we started talking, and the conversation around this table was just electric. It was contagious. You like that word, contagion.
I do.
So we are going to get right into what is the future. I want to start with you, Anita, because you were talking about the history of some of the things that Waupaca does, like Arts on the Square and
But
chalk art
even
and
longer history, that Expo Art is over 50 years. The community concert and the symphony are over 50 years. Then we have Arts on the Square that is more like 12 years. We have Strawberry Fest, 25 years, 25. We have garden walks. These things have been going on for a long time. They're not going to go away because people love them. And every year more gets added. Every year. So I don't know how many years ago, but suddenly there started this chalking on the sidewalks. And it was chalking about art. It's called Chalk of the Town, like Talk of the Town. Chalk of the Town. And then kids started showing up on City Square on a Thursday, and they chalked the whole City Square. They have so many now, you only get one little square because it just keeps growing. When you have a wonderful thing, it grows.
So we were talking about where art is in Waupaca, and we were talking about how the state of Wisconsin spends, and I don't know if I remember the number right, something like 36 cents or something like that per dollar. And we're talking about how do you make art grow, and you're talking about how much is already here. So how does it need to grow, Kevin? And
Yes,
how do we make it grow?
I think it has to grow naturally. It has to grow from the base that is here. I think there are things that the city county and state can do to encourage that growth, which we talked about in the last section. We talked about, Henry brought up making Waupaca, I think in a nutshell, a desirable place for young people to stay. And I commented, I'm a piano tuner, that's how I make my living. I get around to other towns, New London, Shawano, Berlin, Ripon. I think we're right in the middle and the upper level of that. But yes, we do want to may have quality of life for young people. I think like the movie theater is that. Even the Friday night band concert can be that. I mean, those are all enrichments. The restaurants that are downtown are very important, I think, to the quality of life. I just was in Waupaca, and there's one the dairy bar is still there. Other than that, there's no place to get a cup of coffee in Waupaca.
And the dairy bar is up for sale.
And the dairy bar is up for sale.
So I don't even know if it's going to be there, but you're right, that's a nice little restaurant. So if we have all of this, if we have all of these artists, and we still need to make art in Waupaca grow, Tammy, what do we do? Because you were saying that you have some programs that you're starting to try to foster more appreciation and involvement. And that's really what we're after. It's not the appreciation, but it's the involvement. So tell us a little bit.
Rick and I purchased 112 North Main and have been working with the city. We're creating a live-work situation where I will have my glass gallery in the front. Along with the teaching area, we'll live in the back. It makes it very convenient for an artist that works strange hours. And what we really want to do, because one of the things to get people to feel connected to their community, belonging to their community, and maybe these younger kids go off to college, but they want to come back because they had a connection there while they were growing up. And one of the things that we really want to do is have a teaching area where groups can come in and learn how to do different kinds of, in our case, hands-on art, a lot of jewelry creation, but things that would be non-wearable as well, to do a couple things. They learn to work as a group. They maybe interact with people they wouldn't otherwise ever come in contact with because it's an opportunity to come together in a different way. They may have gone to sporting events and different things and they meet different people there, but the more types of things you get involved with, the more diverse people that you meet, and that just expands you as an individual, which then helps the community because people who are in a community that feel connected want to stay there.
And we're going to get to that a little bit because you touched on a point while we were on break that I want to get back to. But and we're going to talk about this a little bit. There's this huge movement of come and be an artist for 4 hours. It's
with wine.
Painted. And I got to tell you, I just did this. The wine, I think, is the big draw. I just did one of those a couple of weeks ago, and I created a picture that I actually look at and said, wow, this actually looks like a horse. And I loved it, and I don't drink, so it wasn't the wine about it, but it's one of the programs that's going on, and it sounds like that's something you want to create, is the ability to bring people in to show them that they can create something.
Yes, and the difference in ours, there probably won't be alcohol involved because we'll probably be working with fire. A lot of the things that we do involve, there'll be like things that you can do with like a creme brulee torch. So no alcohol involved. It's best to keep those things separate.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about expanding art in Waupaca, we are talking about how to get people involved with it, and that leads to how do you get them to stay. And Henry, and I just want you to mention this because you said that you were at the Tech today.
Yeah, it was a session on millennials, basically. And again, that generation is more about experiences. They'll drain their accounts and spend their money because they want an experience. And I think that's what you're trying to create, Tammy.
Absolutely.
From the city standpoint, I really credit you and Rick because you pushed us to think about this live work. And, you know, in our initial research, there wasn't a lot of communities doing it, and the ones that were doing it were like the big cities, and it was just probably not even sanctioned. You know, that horrible situation that occurred in California where they had that, you know, indoor ban and stuff, and this was big art workplace, and it burnt to the ground, and all those people perished. So from the city standpoint, I think there's just a recognition that there's probably some really simple things we can do from regulation, and my sense is we have resources if we just communicate and use them and deploy them differently. So it's probably not all about more money. It's just how we spend it. You know?
Sure, let's go back to the millennials, because I happen to know that millennials spend 44% of their disposable money on going out, whether it's craft breweries or whether it's movies. So it is all about the experience. And we were talking about how do you keep people here? In a town like Waupaca, and we know I come from a town of 1,800 people, the future of the town depends on the children of today and keeping them here. Is it all about arts? Is arts and experience the draw? And is it about getting people involved in something like arts that really is going to create that connection, that is going to make them, I hate to use that word, but it's going to make them want to stay here? Do you think so, Kevin?
Oh, absolutely. And again, we're talking a little bit about what the city can do and regulations. I lived in New York, and I know the Third Ward in Milwaukee, and a big part of that, you know, like the loft in New York, artists living in industrial spaces, taking over spaces that were kind of abandoned by manufacturing and society. Same is true in Milwaukee in the Third Ward. It's a flowering area of restaurants, galleries, shops, and it's basically an old industrial part of town. We've lost some wonderful buildings. The Fisher Fall Mill is the most recent example, because we didn't cherish those spaces in the past. And I'm just wondering if part of that could be if the city could somehow, without spending money, make it easier to transform those beautiful buildings and part of our heritage into some artistic purpose.
So it's not just about what can the city do to make it happen. You know, I hear a lot about this. It's also about what can we do as people? What can we do about citizens as citizens?
It's enthusiasm. It's building enthusiasm, because people will join on if they know that what they join into is an experience for their family, for them. And so you can start really small, and you get a few people, and the next year that ripples out, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, because volunteerism is still alive in this country.
Oh, I think that happened with Phantom Art. We applied for a grant for Madison, didn't get it, but we had like, what, $200 in the coffers, and we just did it anyway, and now we're, you know, sixth year, and we have some money in there, and we're doing it in spite of getting no state support.
And that's a lot of it, I think, is getting involved as people, and it's about fulfilling the dream. Because we all want to do something, we all want something. It's about how do we make it happen, and how can we as people create that drive with whether it's a storefront or whether it's art or whether it's teaching. How can we create the drive to start changing other people's life? And with that, we are about out of time. This has been really interesting. This is one of those conversations that I want to say come back in a year, because let's talk about what's happened over the last year in Waupaca with the arts. But for today, we're going to wrap it up because we've covered a lot of topics. It's art, I think we all agree, is one of those things that we need in our life, but we need to recognize that our lives are art, so that we recognize that we are already enthused, whether it's our clothes or whether it's our jewelry, we already are enthused about our own individuality. So with that, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of What's Happening Waupaca. I'm going to look forward to seeing you next time.